guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Reckless speculation. Reckless speculation.
All right, people were hammering us yesterday. Where's the scoop session? Where's the reckless speculation Thursday? I guess we should have maybe mentioned that scheduling conflicts, and so it's a reckless speculation Friday here and a scoop session with our guy Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department joining us. Doogie, at some point I will tease this. We are definitely not above reading random emails with reckless speculation in them. And I have a great Wolves-related one to run by you guys. But let's start Wolves here. Summer League is tonight, 4 p.m. Central Time, ESPN2. The Wolves have a stacked Summer League roster. They just announced this week the promotion of Matt Lloyd to general manager. So let's start with your Wolves portion of the scoop bag here. They have a new general manager, internal promotion. Let's start there.
TGIF, gentlemen, thank you for your flexibility. Apologies on yesterday. One of the places I was yesterday morning was Gophers football, so maybe at the end of this I can spew a couple notes about some things I gathered over on campus. But on Matt Lloyd, so yes, promoted to general manager. Now, hey, you talk to people over at the Wolves, he's been the number 2. So Sachin Gupta has a VP title. Sachin Gupta was the interim Pobo after Gerson Rosas was let go. But based on the way things have operated since Matt Lloyd has joined the front office, people over there will tell you the optics suggest Matt Lloyd has always been the number 2. So let's make that very clear. It's clear cut. Matt Lloyd is number 2 in the Wolves front office. If, God forbid, something happened to Tim Connolly, it's Matt Lloyd's show. Nobody else's. Although I guess, God forbid if something happened, Dell Demps has run a front office before, so maybe you would have a different conversation. So it's Sachin Gupta. Point is, Matt Lloyd is highly thought of. He interviewed for the Charlotte Hornets Pobo job that went to Jeff Peterson. I am told Charlotte made him an offer thereafter to bring him in to be the number 2, to work under Jeff, but, in synergy with Jeff, right? That, okay, Jeff has, the ultimate trump card, but like Charlotte thought so much of Matt, they wanted him there. So that had something to do with this raise, with this new title. But certainly, he's earned it. Like, you go back to his days in Chicago, had his fingerprints on the Jimmy Butler draft pick many years ago. Some of the moves he made in Orlando. You talk to people around the league, Matt Lloyd is highly thought of. Like, he is ready today, Phil, to run his own front office. To me, it's when, not if. We talk about Micah Nori. Micah Nori is going to get some sort of pay bump. I fully expect that coming very soon. Micah Nori's time to be an NBA head coach, to me, is coming. When, not if. Same with Matt Lloyd. When, not if, he gets a chance to run an NBA front office.
So on Lloyd, do his duties change at all, or is this just a pay bump and also a title bump for prestige sake, I guess you could say?
Yeah, more the latter. I mean, he's one that likes to get out and about. Like, he scouts a lot of college games, all these scouting opportunities. He likes to be in the stands. I don't foresee that changing, but he certainly has really good relationships with a number of agents. They divide up trade calls. They're like the Twins front office. Like the Twins front office right now, they divide up trade calls. It's not like Derek Falvey is calling every team checking in. Thad Levine has some, Daniel Adler, right? There's multiple people. Same deal with the Wolves, like trade deadline time, or even this time of the year, just seeing what teams are interested in doing. Like, a lot of teams are trying to create some roster flexibility right now. You think about a Tyus Jones still being a free agent, a Gary Trent Jr. still being a free agent. The LA Lakers, I promise, would love to have Gary Trent Jr. But you look at their contractual situation, it's just not feasible, right? So Matt Lloyd is the one, oftentimes that is on the phone with a lot of these front offices, not all of them, but trust me, like, he has relationships, good working relationships, friendships also, with just about every organization.
When did I feel like for a long time in sports, it was you had the owner, and then you had the general manager was in charge of running the entire, player operations and everything. And then somewhere along the line in the last 10, 15, 20 years across all of sports, we started creating these these like C-level positions for. So with the Twins, Derek Falvey is the chief baseball officer, and then Thad Levine is the general manager. So there's like a position between the GM and the owner. And then with the Wolves, you've got Tim Connolly as the POBO, president of basketball operations, is the new term, right? Tom Thibodeau was a POBO, if I remember correctly. When did we start doing this, and what's the difference between what Tim Connolly does as the president of basketball operations and Matt Lloyd as the general manager working beneath him? Do we know?
Well, I mean, the difference would be like Matt Lloyd. Now, it's actually somebody who's under Matt, but that Matt oversees, like, puts together these pre-draft workouts. Tim Connolly isn't reaching out to these agents to line up, Jamison Battle to come to Mayo Clinic Square for a pre-draft workout, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in many ways, that's below what Tim does. Tim, though, I mean, he'll tell you, right? It's a great buzzword in sports right now. It can get Royce going. Collaboration, right? I mean, they meet on a daily basis, right? They kick around ideas. Sure, does Tim maybe steer the ship? Sure. But there's a lot of healthy dialogue in those meetings. Now, hey, when they're making any sort of big transaction, that's Tim reaching out to Glenn, Mark, Alex. That's not necessarily Matt, right? So that would be one difference. When you're Tim Connolly, you have the best relationship with ownership. Not that Matt doesn't have a relationship with ownership, but that's Tim making those calls to get ultimate approval on certain moves. But Phil, I'm with you. Like, how long ago were there only like 3 or 4 assistant coaches on an NBA bench? Now we have a second row of coaches. There's literally a coach for just about every player. How many different developmental coaches do we have? I was over at Wild's Prospects Camp on Tuesday. The amount of coaches on the ice, the amount of front office executives up in the suite above Tria Rink. I'm like, holy cow, when did all these people join the Wild organization? Now, some are up from Iowa, right? The Iowa Wild staff is in town helping out. But I was blown away at the amount of coaches that were on the ice.
It's working well for the Wild, too, all those coaches. Yeah.
Well, and what was interesting about that was one of the guys up in the booth, if you saw Dukes, was Alex Goligoski, who is expected to retire now. And that's the thing, too, is you got a lot of guys that are like, interested in joining the business. But I would say to Phil's question, this is a baseball basketball thing, I think, that started at some point in time. I'm trying to think, what was it, Theo Epstein? Like,
yes.
So somebody got the bright idea of, what we should do? 1, pay me more, and 2, structure have a structure where I oversee the GM, because to what Phil said, I think it used to be the guy that owned the team. And I think it was Theo. It might have been in Boston. It definitely was with the Cubs, though, because the Cubs came out with this whole hierarchy that we hadn't seen, I don't think, much before that.
Also, like with Red Sox, for instance, so you get these ownership groups that, okay, they don't just own their team, they own multiple sports franchises, and so they're not able to pay attention. It's not like Jerry Jones in the old school ownership days where this is the owner and this is the only thing they focus on. It's like a lot of these multi-billionaires have their hand in 20 different things, and so they need someone to sort of sit up there and essentially operate as the day-to-day owner of the team. And for Theo comes in, he's like, all right, listen, I've graduated beyond like some of the day-to-day GM duties. I'd love to still work in baseball, but I'm not going to be like going through the waiver wire every day anymore. I just snapped an 86-year Red Sox World Series curse.
That Terry Ryan stuff, I ain't doing that. I ain't doing
exactly
what Terry Ryan in Minnesota does.
Well, in baseball, too, like Derek Falvey, like he takes some road trips, but like 10, 15 years ago, the GM would take literally every road trip.
Yeah.
Now it's divided up, right? I mean, Derek's got family. He's got a young man who plays Little League Baseball in the West Metro, right? He wants to go watch his son play. He's not going to take literally every road trip. On the Cubs, Phil, were you in Chicago for the bachelor party back in, I guess it would have been 09, my bachelor
Randy
party? Randy
Bush,
right? Our guy, Randy Bush. Like, he was number 2 in the Cubs front office for a stretch. Then all of a sudden, I think he was like bumped down to 4 or 5. I think Theo had a lot to do with that, right? Like all these people come in, and next thing you know, our guy Randy Bush is like number 5.
Hey, real quick, for the audience, so Doogie's bachelor party was 15 years ago. It was 2009, if I remember right. Very foggy for good reasons. So we were at Harry Carey Steakhouse. It was like, I don't know, 12 or 15 guys that we went to a Cubs game and we're celebrating Doogie. And Randy Bush, former Twins player, Twins utility guy, he's downstairs dining with, I don't know, other members of the Cubs or friends, and he catches wind that there's 15 Twins fans upstairs. And he came up and sat down at the table by the way, with a World Series ring on, if I'm not mistaken. And he just shot the breeze, like drank a bourbon and hung out with us for like an hour and told some stories. It was pretty cool.
It was. Now, there were a couple people in our group that had a connection to Randy, so that probably helped.
Yep.
But yeah, that was a memorable trip, right? We had the picture on the field. Our buddy Peter, who was in the Cubs front office or media relations, head of media relations for the Cubs. So it certainly helped to have that relationship. But yeah, good times. 15 years ago. But yes, like think about Randy. Heck, I don't even know. Is Randy still in the Cubs front office?
I don't know.
I don't even know. Like, because there's been so many changes. But yeah, he was once upon a time like on the path to being the guy. And next thing you know, he's like pushed down to like, fifth or sixth. Sort of like somebody we all know, Rob Antony, who's no longer with the Twins, right? Was number 2 assistant general manager. Him and Mike Radcliffe, the late Mike Radcliffe, had a lot of responsibility under Terry Ryan, right? New regime comes in. Now, hey, to Derek and Thad's credit, like Rob will tell you this, they easily could have let Rob go any number of times since Derek came in 2016. Rob's contract wasn't renewed in the last year. So Rob was able to hold on for a number of years. But sort of the same idea, right? When a new boss comes in, best of luck to anybody remaining in that front office. That's why I think about a guy like Manny Rohan in the Wolves front office, salary cap expert. Like, credit to him. Or like a guy we know, Kevin Stefanski, on the coaching side. Think about all the regimes that he was a part of, now to be able to run his own show in Cleveland.
I do think the one thing that is a separator in what we're talking about here, Dukes, is what you just said, though, and that is if you're a good cap guy, you're invaluable. Like, that's the one thing, because a lot of these guys are up front, they can't do it. So like when Guerin or when his right-hand cap man left last year, they literally had to go to the league to help them out with a cap. So, like, that's the one thing. If you want to get into sports and stay there and be secure, take notes from a guy like Rob Brzezinski of the Vikings. Those guys are absolutely lifers because a lot of people can't do what they do.
No, most people can't. I mean, we tried to,
me,
right?
By the way. I couldn't even.
And hey, there's some great websites, Over the Cap. You name any number of outlets where we can fact check a lot of this stuff. But frankly, like, anytime I have an NBA salary cap question, a lot of people come to me with different questions.
Yep.
98% of the time, I don't have the answer. What I do is, hey, go into my phone, I'll blow up somebody, whether it's a Bobby Marks, right, or somebody who's currently in a front office.
Yep.
Like, I'll reach out to somebody for the answer because, frankly, most of that stuff is way over my head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you guys want this recklessly speculative email?
Yes.
Reckless.
I'm ready. Got my pen.
speculation.
Give it to me.
So, all right, this is from Dom D'Angelo. Sends it in. It says, hey, coming to you as a Vikings fan, Purple Daily listener here, that loves Purple Daily. I also happen to be a fan of the New York Knicks. And there are rare times that our NBA teams ever cross paths, but I have a reckless speculation thought for you here. And he references a Knicks podcast called Knicks Fan TV, and the host is CP the Franchise. So some background. I've met CP a couple times. So AG1 is one of our partners on Purple Daily, which, by the way, go to drinkag1.com/Purple Daily if you want to get some free travel packs. But so we had, like, when AG1 jumped on board on Purple Daily, we had like just a call as ambassadors, right, with one of their reps. So the call was the AG1 person, me, and then CP the Franchise for like an hour just on this Zoom call talking about basketball and AG1 and whatever. So he's a good guy with a huge podcast, Knicks Fan TV. So he apparently spoke multiple times on his podcast recently with sourced information about the Knicks having legit interest in Karl-Anthony Towns. He specifically said, quote, the Knicks like Cat more than Julius Randle, who's been on their team for a few years, and mentioned he still thinks the Knicks aren't done making moves this summer. There's been a lot of steam on this topic, but is there any way, and now this is Dom's idea here. He's taking what has been sort of reported on Knicks Fan TV and spinning his own idea. Is there any way that this 3-team trade could work between the Jazz, Knicks, and Timberwolves? Essentially, it would be Julius Randle and his 2 years left, $30 million a year, to Utah, Cat to the Knicks, and then Lauri Markkanen to the Timberwolves. I know there's a ton of details that would need to be worked out, but there's some steam for you guys. So, I mean, Julius Randle is just kind of an odd fit at this point in New York. He's, they've kind of built infrastructure without him. And so you could send a year and a half of his contract to Utah. They're kind of tanking anyways. They could let that contract expire, or they could spin him if they wanted to. The Jazz have $35 million in cap space to absorb, so they could absorb if they needed to. And then the Wolves would get the benefit of swapping Cat and like 5 years of bloated salaries for Lauri Markkanen, who they'd probably have to sign to an extension. I think Lowry's a really interesting fit replacing Cat on this team, but is there any way that something like this could still pop up between now and the regular season?
All right, and a bunch of first-round picks then go to Utah. So Utah takes on Julius Randle in this scenario, but Utah also gets. So the benefit for Utah is because, hey, if you're the Utah Jazz at this point, you should, for lack of a better term, tank next season to be in as advantageous a position as possible to get as high a pick as possible in the 2025 draft. Recency bias, but if you watch these scrimmages, Cooper Flagg, the kid headed to Duke, is going to be like minimum an NBA star. And his ceiling is superstar. This Cooper Flagg kid is off the charts. You want the number one pick in next year's draft. And hey, if you fall in love with one of the Rutgers kids like Ace Bailey or Harper, fine, so be it. It is a really good top of the draft next June. So for your Utah, to me, it makes logical sense to move Markkanen somewhere. Like, Markkanen helps you too much. Maybe you sign him to an extension, then move him. It's a very finite amount of time, but you move him at the trade deadline in February. But to me, it makes sense for Utah to move Markkanen. Do I believe the New York Knicks have genuine interest in Karl-Anthony Towns? I do. Leon Rose running the Knicks front office, his former agent. Gerson Rosas is a fan of Cat in the Knicks front office. By the way, Gerson spotted at Target Field the other day hanging out with Chris Finch. Hey, they're buddies, right? I mean, Chris is here because of Gerson, right? So there's a friendship there. But I'm just saying there are two people in the Knicks front office who really like Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, I'm telling you, Phil, I've not heard anything recently. It goes back to many weeks ago. They're just
the Markkanen steam was interesting because it's like the only way that could happen is if you traded Jaden or Cat or maybe Nas. So like the fact that even popped up in a couple reports was like 2 weeks ago was like,
I know.
Oh, wow,
and hey,
interesting.
Like, I firmly believe Tim Connolly is a fan of Markkanen, but how much is it of just them, like the Rosas front office, like just doing their due diligence? They make a lot of calls. They like having their finger on the pulse of everything happening. Plus, they do really like the player. So you ask about the player, but like, have talks ever gotten off the ground with Utah? I haven't sensed that whatsoever. What about this idea? What if you take Utah out of the picture? Would you at all consider something along the lines of Julius Randle plus Josh Hart here for Karl-Anthony Towns? So Josh Hart can help you. He's got, multiple years left. Does Julius Randle move the needle at all? But that helped you get off the Cat contract when thinking about long-term ramifications, aprons, all that. Now, to me, the more logical path is you do extend Rudy Gobert. There remains legit interest, both sides, in getting a Rudy Gobert extension done at some point. So you rip up that player option for the 2025-2026 season, right? So Rudy entering the final year of his contract, you rip up that player option for the 25-26 season. His extension then kicks in then. You're lowering the cap hit. right? And Rudy gets long-term security. So Rudy gets, a nice salary for his ages like 33, 34, 35 seasons. But if you're the Wolves, you can get below that second apron by doing something like that. That to me seems more logical.
You lose the shooting,
either
though.
a 2-team trade with New York or a 3-team trade involving Utah.
Yeah, I mean, Julius Randle's a good player, but he can't. He's not a good 3-point shooter, but he still takes like 5 or 6 or 7 a game. So it's like you'd have to.
What's his health like too? It feels like he's been in and out quite a bit. He's really good when he's healthy, but his ability to stay on the court concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he did play 70 or more games the 3 previous years. Okay. Last year he only played the 46 games.
He got hurt and then missed the postseason. So
Cat's been more of an injury.
Was, but it was pretty significant.
Okay. Yeah, Cat's been more of an injury. I mean, it's stuff just keeps floating out. This is just another tentacle from the Knicks. There's all these things every single year. So I figured I would just bring that to the table.
I like it because, hey, the Knicks still have some trade pieces. I can buy that the Knicks are still looking to do something. You see Philadelphia make all these moves. Boston is going to be really good. So, yes, will the Knicks be good? They should be. But is New York right now better than Philly or Boston? We can have a fair conversation about that. Certainly, to me, they're not better than Boston. Now, Philadelphia, can those guys stay healthy? So maybe New York bets on, hey, we'll stay healthy, like Mikal Bridges, Iron Man. He doesn't miss games. So, hey, we'll be okay, right? Even though they just had a bunch of injuries derail their season. But hey, we can keep Brunson healthy. We can keep Bridges healthy. As long as we keep those 2 guys healthy, like we'll be a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. Philadelphia may not stay healthy, but hey, as long as Leon is running the Knicks, Gerson is in New York, Cat's got this enormous contract. Will the Wolves ever move off the Cat contract? I think the dialogue is going to be out there, especially in this moment with Utah, right? Like Utah, to me, is going to move Markkanen. Now, I'm telling you, maybe it's February. Maybe it's not this summer. And hey, if I had to bet, it's certainly not here to Minnesota. But now that we know that there are fans in the Wolves front office of Markkanen, hey, let's keep the dialogue going. It's fun to talk about.
Absolutely. Can we transition to Twins? Because I got a Twins trade deadline comes up July 30th. A lot of people are very skeptical, including our own Trevor Plouffe Dukes, about if they're going to make a move. And, obviously, the ideal thing would be a starter, but the price on that, both from a prospect standpoint and possibly a contract standpoint, wouldn't be cheap. I will say this. The Twins have done nothing so far to fly in the face of Joe Poled's comment that they were going to reduce payroll and keep it like that. Are you hearing any steam as far as a potential trade by July 30th goes?
Well, I mean, Judd, I fully expect them to do something. Now, could it be just for a reliever on an expiring contract or one that is arbitration eligible, you can make a decision on later? Sure. I fully expect them to do something, right? I don't think this is going to be last year's trade deadline. I fully expect them to do something. Now, do I expect it to be, the trade deadline of, a couple years ago? Was that the Tyler Mahle, Jorge Lopez year? Was that 22? Years start to blend together. That was 22, right, Phil? Not 21 on Tyler Mahle and Jorge Lopez? Mm-hmm. All right. So, I don't expect something large, 2 moves like that this month, but they are going to do something, Judd. I'm positive they are going to do something. The question is, could it be perhaps something a little bit bigger? Certainly I took notice yesterday when the Toronto Blue Jays put Kevin Kiermaier on waivers. It certainly seems like they are now completely open for business. They probably should have been weeks ago. It just hasn't worked, this roster. But I just don't know how the Blue Jays make a run, especially in that division, the rest of the year. So they have a handful of pending free agents. A guy like Justin Turner, right? When thinking about a team that could use a bat presence. But Yusei Kikuchi, starting pitcher. Now, speaking of recency bias, I was watching on the baseball package the other night, Blue Jays Giants from Oracle Park. Kikuchi was so good. And I get it, the Giants lineup isn't, the 27 Yankees, okay? But Kikuchi was so darn good. I can just tell you. So I don't know if the Twins have talked to the Blue Jays in recent days or weeks specifically about Kikuchi. What I can tell you is back in 22, when Kikuchi ultimately chose Toronto, the Twins were heavily involved. I mean, I'm positive I reported that then, but easily forgotten. I get it. But I'm just telling you, the Twins really like Kikuchi. I think, hey, like, how many innings is Chris Paddock going to pitch this year? Bailey Ober, like, what is Bailey Ober going to look like in September? Simeon Woods Richardson has been fantastic. Can you trust him, though, in September into October? Pablo Lopez, roller coaster, Joe Ryan, excellent. But clearly, to me, you can use another starting pitcher. This offense is so good that you should have the thought, even though I get it, you're 0-14 against the best teams in the American League, right? Guardians, Orioles, Yankees. You don't have a win against those teams. But your record against other winning teams, the Royals, the Mariners, whoever else, is pretty darn good. You are a good team that's capable of making a Texas Rangers-esque run like last year. Texas was, the 5 seed last year. Went on to win the World Series. If you're the Twins, you need to have that mindset. My understanding is they do have that mindset. So if you have that mindset, whether it's Kikuchi or another starting pitcher, you better go get one. Go find a starting pitcher. But I'm not telling you right now, Judd, I'm positive that is going to happen. Even though they are thinking like that, they are making calls about starting pitchers. I just don't know ultimately if a deal happens. But I am positive they are going to acquire a reliever.
Before we get to the rest of Doogie's scoop bag here, Nicolay Law is the exclusive personal injury law firm of SKOR North podcasts. And Nicolay Law is here if you've been in an accident. So that, Russell Nicolay, and you see him on the YouTube channel here, just wandering through US Bank Stadium. Whether it's Russell or anyone on his team, they are proud to serve the Twin Cities communities that they live in. They're just normal, everyday folks that happen to have law degrees, and they're here to help you when you've been injured. Get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers, NicolayLaw.com, or give them a call at 1-855-NICOLAY. Also, Dennis Kirk is here for riding season. We appreciate their partnership. DennisKirk.com to check out over 185,000 parts, apparel, and accessories for motorcycles, ATVs, UTVs, dirt bikes, you name it. Same-day shipping and free shipping on orders over $89. Plus, coming up here at the end of the month, it's the first annual Minnesota Garage Build Bike Show, powered by Dennis Kirk. Actually, it's coming up this weekend, I should say. Saturday, July 13th. So tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, which is a fun spot. Dozens of custom-built motorcycles, hundreds of dollars in Dennis Kirk gift cards, local food trucks, live DJ, all details at DennisKirk.com. That's DennisKirk.com. Okay, Dukes, last couple minutes here. What else is left in your scoop bag for us?
Well, I'm still awaiting the PJ Dozier Wolves contract to be filed. So until it's filed, I don't want to spew any potential, is it non-guaranteed? Is it a fully standard NBA contract? I want to wait on that, but it is interesting that he still hasn't put pen to paper on that deal. People have asked me, Phil, about this 6-team deal, the Klay Thompson 6-team for 6-team trade in NBA history from a few days ago. The terms of what the Wolves received hasn't been reported. So I'm here to tell you what the Wolves received. We heard future draft considerations or a 2025 draft pick even. We had that specific information, but we didn't have any information on who that pick is coming from, any of that stuff. So here you go. Here is the full details of what the Wolves receive in this first 6-team trade in NBA history. Denver conveyed to the Wolves a 2025 second-round draft pick, the less favorable of Denver's own and Philadelphia's own. So we're not talking about a great 2025 second-round pick. Golden State conveyed to Minnesota the right to swap 2031 second-round draft picks, and within 30 days, Golden State owes the Wolves $1.1 million. So there was some cash involved in that transaction as well. Target Center on Sunday, Caitlin Clark. They have sold well over 10,000 tickets. By the end here, it'll be north of 15,000. Large crowd expected Sunday for Caitlin Clark, Indiana Fever, against the Minnesota Lynx. Busy recruiting weekend for college basketball. Ben Johnson of the Gophers was in Atlanta yesterday watching one of the Howard Pulley teams. And I mentioned I was over at Tria Rink on Tuesday. Judd, you might know the pronunciation. Their 4th-round draft pick from Finland, a defenseman, Aaron Kiviharju. I don't know if I'm saying it right. It's something along those lines. I had 2 people come up to me that know a lot of stuff right? Not necessarily in the Wild front office, but two people that know a ton of stuff about hockey that happened to be in the stands. It was open for anybody who wanted to show up. They told me the Wild got a steal in this kid. Aaron, and I believe it's Kiva Harju, but I might be botching the pronunciation. He's from Finland, a defenseman. They got him in the 4th round. Over at Gophers football yesterday, Ja Joyner, he looks fantastic. He's been training recently with Von Miller, some other NFL players. I asked him how that came about. He said, well, I have an advisor, right? That's the new thing now in college. You've got all these advisors brokering these NIL deals. So his advisor lined up him working out with Von Miller, some other pass rushers. Ja Joyner is going to be an NFL player. He'll get drafted next April. If he gets to 10 sacks, which I think is realistic this year, he would become the first Gopher since Willie Vandestieg in 2008. It's been 16 years since a Gopher has hit double-digit sacks. But Ja Joyner has a realistic chance to do that this year.
All right. Darren Doogie Wolfson, a Friday scoop session here, a little reckless speculation. Dukes, we'll catch you next Tuesday, man. Great stuff. Have a good weekend.
Sounds good. And the Twins still are getting calls on Matt Wallner, like Royals, Mariners. But, hey, we've seen it the last week. That man never needs to go back to the minors. Please, Uncle Mercy, Twins, like when Royce Lewis is ready to go here, July 20th or July 21st or July 22nd or 3rd, please don't send Matt Wallner back to the minors. Yeah. He is a big league player. Yes, there's going to be swing and miss. But if I'm the Twins, Matt Wallner is in my lineup for the foreseeable future. But I'm just telling you, they continue to get a lot of trade calls on him.
Agreed.
Have a good weekend, boys. See ya.
See ya, Dukes. Ride the 16 home runs he's about to hit in the next 5 weeks. All right, Minnesota sports with Mackey and Judd.